Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Just DAO It podcast, the podcast for people starting DAOs. I'm Adam Miller, and I'm your host. I'm the CEO of MiDAO, the legal entity solution provider for DAOs, and prior to starting my DAO, I did consulting for people starting and operating DAOs. First, I'd like to welcome our guest, Lou. Lou, would you please give a brief introduction to yourself and make sure to share with the audience what makes you an authority on DAOs?
Sure. So Lou Kerner, thanks for having me, Adam. I've been crypto 24/7 for a little more than 5 years now. And my primary job is I'm a partner at a firm called Blockchain Co-Investors. We're a crypto fund-to-fund invested in 40 of the leading crypto VCs. We do one-off investments, and we have a crypto SPAC. I'm most known in the industry, I think, for having started CryptoMondays, which is the largest crypto meetup in the world. Adam runs Crypto Monday Orange County, one of more than 40 active chapters around the world. Earlier this year, we started something called the Crypto Oracle Collective, which is a decentralized Web3 advisory firm, and we're up to 100 web experts there. And like lots of people, I've spent a lot of time thinking about DAOs and learning about DAOs. By way of background, I started my career as an equity analyst on Wall Street, and then ran two digital companies, including the top-level domain .tv, which we bought from the alienation of Tuvalu, and the largest social network before MySpace called Bolt. We peaked at 23 million kids. And so I was thinking deeply about community 20 years ago, and continued to think a lot about community. And when I saw the crypto light on June 29th, 2017, what I saw was, for the first time in history, we had a tool set to solve the community. And obviously that's what DAOs are, tool sets to solve for communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Very exciting. And it's been awesome getting to work with you on Crypto Mondays, among other things. Let's do it. First up, the Just DAO It news report. And then in the second half of the podcast, as always, we will interview Lou. For the news report, I will be summarizing these stories for the audience and for our guest and sharing my reactions. And then we will turn to Lou to see if he has anything to add for each story. And we'll try to think especially about what's relevant about these stories for DAOs and people starting DAOs. First story is from cryptoslate.com. And the headline is, Tornado Cash DAO shuts down as it can't fight the US and keep contributors safe. According to a member of the Tornado Cash team, the DAO has been shut down as it can't fight the US and contributors are scared of being prosecuted. So most people in crypto have probably heard about Tornado Cash by now. That's the mixer service that was added to the OFAC blacklist of people and organizations that Americans are not allowed to deal with financially. What's interesting about this story broadly is that Tornado Cash is simply a set of smart contracts living on the blockchain. And a lot of law-abiding citizens interact with Tornado Cash and use it as a way to achieve privacy. For example, if they don't want someone knowing what NFTs they bought or where they got their money, even if it was perfectly legal. But at the same time, we know that North Korea used Tornado Cash and others use Tornado Cash for illegal purposes, according to the US government. Of course, what's relevant here for DAOs is that Tornado Cash was run by a DAO. And part of the story talks about the fact that the DAO was represented by a multi-sig, and the multi-sig was deleted, and all the cash was sent to the multi-sig holders. Now, the hot take I'll give that's a little bit different from what I've heard anyone else say in the crypto news is, I'm really curious what happened with the money. So this is a situation that a lot of DAOs are in where it might be a little less decentralized than the members think, because it's just 5 or 7 people holding assets in a multi-sig that technically have all the power. And when those 5 or 7 people decided they wanted to, quote unquote, shut down the DAO, they just took all the money and ran. And, I haven't been able to find any report of what they actually did with the money. Did they send it to themselves? Did they send it somewhere else? Did they use Tornado Cash to hide it? I'm not sure if anyone knows. Lou I'm sure will let us know if he knows. But I think that's one of the lessons.
Well, I don't have any. I know that.
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't send it to you?
No.
Me neither, unfortunately. Well, fortunately or unfortunately. So it's an interesting case of, I think, something that's common in DAOs, which is, not entirely clear how decentralized it really is. So Lou, anything to reflect on the Tornado Cash story?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, obviously, the bigger story is, yeah, I think the overreach by the U.S. government, and all of the implications that are, I think, largely just negative for the United States. You know, this is happening, and countries that embrace it, are going to be at a huge advantage relative to countries who try and fight it. It's no different than, when the internet first came out, there were lots of countries that fought it and didn't allow their citizens to have free access to the internet because of all the negative implications. Everything's a double-edged sword, and so I think we're just shooting ourselves as a country in the in the foot or the face or wherever. And I think in the long run, not really accomplishing a whole lot. And if you want to shut down, everything that North Korea uses to accomplish it, then you should shut down most U.S. banks. You should shut down
Right.
Microsoft and Excel spreadsheets, and so just because they use a tool to do bad things, you should go after the bad people, not the tool makers.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that anyone can launch another Tornado Cash anytime they want by just launching another smart contract with the same code. And that new smart contract won't be on the OFAC blacklist until, months or years later when the government finds out about it. So it's like, I don't know that they're even really stopping people who really need
There's
to
just a
use something
laundry
like
list
Tornado
of
Cash.
just horrific,
Yeah.
elements of it that and nobody knows the answer to it. Are the regulators just ignorant and they don't understand the implications, or what is probably even worse, do they understand the implications?
Yeah.
And they're still
Yeah.
doing it, just protecting the incumbents.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I mean, in some ways, I can't blame them for trying to fight North Korea, right? It seems like North Korea is doing, at
We
least the
all we
regime
all
that's in
want to fight
charge.
North Korea, but
Right,
we don't see
exactly.
them shutting down Microsoft Excel because they use
Yeah.
Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point. And I don't know that the government's ever shut down a bank. Even when they get found out for dealing with a sanctioned entity, they get a fine of $1 million, 10 million, 100 million, even a billion or two. But
And every year they get fined, right?
yeah, right. And
Because
they keep
this is just
operating.
part of the standard business, um,
Yeah.
of a lot of banks.
Yep, very true. All right. Turning to the next story is from The Block. And the headline is relatedly, Aave says on chain wallet address censorship would require DAO consensus. So this is about the DeFi product called Aave, or protocol, I should say, called Aave, which a lot of people use for borrowing and lending and exchanging tokens. And Aave says that the current wallet monitoring protocols that it manages are only on its front end app, and that the team added that any escalation to the smart contract level will require a DAO vote. So this is describing a situation that I think is in contrast to the situation with the Tornado Cash DAO, where there is a central entity that hosts the quote unquote front end for Aave, which means the actual website that you get to if you go to Aave's website, the website that tells your wallet in your browser how to interact with the Aave protocol. But the protocol itself is living completely on the blockchain, and they're saying that, look, we as a company that OFAC could come after if they wanted to, we can't even shut down the smart contracts if they want to. In this case, it's what I would call a true DAO, or really decentralized DAO, where there's actually tens or hundreds of thousands of people holding Aave's token that would have to vote to make a change to the smart contract. And so even if OFAC said, stop allowing people to use the smart contract, they wouldn't be able to do that. They'd have to take it to the DAO, and people would have to vote on whether to make a change. And so it's an interesting contrast to the Tornado Cash situation, where a small group of people could simply run away with all the assets, or at least shut down the protocol. But acknowledging this situation that's occurring, where now everyone is wondering, well, what's going to happen if OFAC decides to blacklist our smart contracts or come after us? Anything to add, Lou?
Well, I would say that they can still decide to throw anybody who uses Aave in jail.
Yeah, it's a good point. And they did throw the Tornado Cash, one of the Tornado Cash developers, in jail. It's another piece of that news. Although I've heard a lot of rumblings that maybe he or she was involved in something other than Tornado Cash. We don't really know why they put the person in jail. But yeah, it's a good point. I mean, at some point, if the U.S. government wants to come after us, they'll find a way to come after us, right? We're local. They can, or even if we're somewhere else in the world, they can find us and throw us in jail.
Yeah. I mean, I think the lesson that a lot of people obviously have learned is just don't allow U.S. customers to use your product. That's the
Mm.
easiest way around it.
And I think that's related to what you were saying before, right? Like we're shooting ourselves in the foot here, not
Exactly.
allowing our own country to innovate and to take part in innovation with some of these rules.
Right. Arguably, I mean, FTX should have been started here, but it wasn't started here because he couldn't start it here. And even, trying to operate here, he's still getting hassled.
It's a good point. And I think they're based out of Bahamas or Bermuda or something like that.
Yeah, they originally started
Um,
in Hong Kong, but left Hong Kong
yeah.
for obvious reasons.
And now it's a multi-billion-dollar company.
30 billion, I think, was last market
Wow.
cap, right? And
Yep. We could be collecting taxes on it. Could be hiring people here. Yep. Absolutely. All right. The next story is actually a couple of tweets from the DAO Research Collective, which is a great Twitter account to follow at DAO Research Co. And the first of the tweets is the following. We are thrilled to officially announce the launch of our new nonprofit DAO library. This library aggregates and curates DAO research on a single platform. It is a public good that will always be accessible to the community at no cost. How the DAO library works. And then a thread. And the thread shows that DAO Research Collective has launched this great resource where you can go type in something like treasury stablecoins, and you'll be presented with a list of resources covering topics including allocating stablecoins, strategy for method and timing of diversification, tax issues, etc. And so wanted to just share that this looks like a great resource. So go check out the DAO Research Collective. And specifically, one of the articles in their collective that they also tweeted about around the same day. Here's the tweet. In his overview of DAO legal entity structures, DAO Research Co. Head of Research David M. Kerr offers a broad refresher on legal wrapper options currently available to DAOs in the US. So this is one of the stories in the DAO Research Collective library is about DAO legal wrappers, which listeners probably know is very near and dear to my heart, since that's what my DAO does as well. And I wanted to take the chance to plug the new MyDAO Guide to DAO Incorporation, which you can find on our website at mydao.org, which is similar but takes a little bit of a different approach, not just comparing legal entities, but talking about why you might want one or not want one and how to go about getting one in the first place. Lou, anything to add on this topic?
well, first, was my DAO mentioned in that guy's article about DAO wrappers?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I know David's a great researcher and yeah, it does talk about MyDAO. All right. Next article is from Bloomberg, and the headline is This entrepreneur is betting the future of retail runs on the blockchain and Discord. Itsuki Daito is offering a Web3 twist on brick and mortar retail, a store owned and operated by a decentralized autonomous organization. So this is a store. There's a picture of it in the Hayes Valley neighborhood of San Francisco. And the sign in the store says, a retail store run by a DAO. You vote via NFT memberships. I think a couple things that are cool about this. One is it's great to see crypto finding kind of meet space or a physical world location and doing some stuff in that space, which will hopefully bring more people into crypto in the digital world. I also think it's interesting that there's actually a lot of stores already that are operated as collectives, right? Where probably a lot of people have heard of REI. A lot of cities have supermarkets that are run as collectives, or at least they used to. And so this is similar, but it's a store that's using the blockchain and the technology that's being built to run DAOs rather than using email and paper and board meetings and the stuff that a traditional collective probably would have had to do. And I think we'll see a lot more of this going forward.
I would just say what I'm more excited about, not just taking this technology and doing things that we're already doing, not, let's put Uber on the blockchain or Facebook on the blockchain. It turns out those things work pretty well and people kind of like them. I don't particularly, like Facebook, but, 2 billion people do. So for me, like the more interesting things about new ways that we can do things with these technologies, not just taking the old things we're doing and just now putting them on the blockchain.
Yeah, that's a good point. And does that particular example come to mind of the kind of thing that we think is possible now that was not possible before DAOs?
The idea of automated market makers. Now, we had market makers before, but through automating it becomes something completely totally different, not just kind of the same thing. So I guess that's when I think about the first time my mind was really 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 blown, it was when I saw Bancor, which was the original automated market maker. Uniswap just kind of forked Bancor and put in the ETH instead of the BNT token. But and I think obviously we're at the very beginning of it. And I think being able to take what Aave's doing, obviously, super super interesting.
Yeah, and I'll build on that and say that something like Bancor, you could have in the past created a collective and then launched a piece of software and said this collective is going to run this open source software living on the blockchain. But if you wanted to make changes to it, you would have had to make a decision as a collective, and the collective would have had to tell their engineers, okay, now go make these changes. And then the engineers would go make changes, upload the changes. Today, you can have the DAO or the whatever governance structure directly connected to and controlling the software, so that when the governance process makes a decision about the software, like changing a fee or changing a term or adding a feature, you can make it so that it's literally impossible to change that software without the DAO or governance process approving that change first. And then when it makes the change, it's automatically reflected in the software. And so removing that link of trust and reliability and having to rely on a group of engineers, whether they're internal to the cooperative or external open source developers, that's huge, right? And that's something that you don't have with a retail store. You can't program, a window to open. Well, you could program a window to open and close, but you can't program like a software to paint the cabinet's a different color when the DAO decides they want to change the color. You still have to have a person go do it. But with software, you can 100% control the software directly by the DAO, because the DAO is software too. And it is. I mean, it's already in effect in some places, right? Like I know Uniswap, there's a big debate right now in their DAO, in their community, about whether to quote unquote turn on the fee switch. And what they mean is, the software was built with the capability of paying fees back to token holders when those token holders decide to vote that they want to start getting paid fees. And so there is a discussion now, okay, is it time that we start taking some fees to the DAO, to the token holders, rather than just leaving everything in the protocol and with the liquidity providers. And so that's a good example of kind of a DAO having direct control over a piece of software. All right, next article is from Cointelegraph, and the headline is "Talking with Eva Kaili, VP of the European Parliament on MiCA regulation." The Vice President of the European Parliament shares her perspective on the European Union's markets in crypto assets legislation and how it would affect the industry. So this article is an interview of Eva Kaili from the European Parliament, asking her about all kinds of digital markets related issues, DeFi issues, MiCA, which is this landmark legislation in Europe and regulation of crypto and digital assets. And one of the questions she's asked is about DAOs. And the question really is about, what will be the impact of not only DAOs and blockchain, but combining it with artificial intelligence and machine learning and quantum technology. And her answer goes into the concept of a lex cryptographia, which is a world where the law, the nature of life has changed so much with the way we've programmed society that we start to just ignore the old laws that are written in books and in government legislation, and we simply start using the new laws instead, because they're simply so much better and they're automated, and you have to follow them because they're coded into law. And then it's kind of like, if we think about today, there's laws on the books from hundreds of years ago that are technically still on the books, but we just don't follow them anymore. And if someone tries to enforce one of these laws about not eating ice cream on Sunday or certain types of sex that are not allowed, right? If you take someone to court over that, the judge will say, oh no, we don't follow that law anymore. It's common sense. And that's actually okay. That's a normal part of our society. And that's what she's suggesting could happen with crypto too, is that we're kind of building a new world, and if the laws don't keep up, we'll just move to this lex cryptographia, where we're simply following the new rules and ignoring the old rules.
Where I'm hoping these tools get used for is that we can kind of exist in our own communities that, and adhere to the rules that we want to adhere to. And I personally, I want to live in communities that don't have guns. But if somebody wants to have a gun, I understand they should be able to have one. They should just not live in my community. Also at a high level too, I actually don't really even believe that laws actually exist. I just think that there are people in power and what they decide to do with it.
Interesting. So at least they're just another human construct, right? Just like everything else, or they really don't exist.
Well, I think there's a law in a book, but what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything outside of the fact that there's somebody in power who is going to decide, how to enforce that and penalize somebody completely at their discretion. So is that really a law, or that's just somebody in power? And to me, it seems that it's just really the person in power, and much less, the law. So and that's why we have a Supreme Court, just so we can change the laws. So if a law can be changed, because is it a law?
Certainly different from a law of physics that cannot be broken.
Exactly. That's the nice thing about having it all coded. All that bullshit goes away.
All right, very cool. The final article of the DAO News Report is from CryptoMode.com. And this is another fun DAO. It's called Evinco Winery DAO, merging 120 years of wine history with crypto, NFTs, and Web3. This is another example of, Lou, you were mentioning before, maybe less exciting when people take something that we've always been able to do and just do it with a little bit of Web3 attached. This is a winery DAO that's taking the concept, I would say, of a wine club and moving it into the digital world. And as they do it, giving a little bit more control and putting engaging the community a little bit more than you might have with a traditional wine club. So I'm curious, Lou, if you have a favorite wine and what you think about the Winery DAO.
I guess I'm not a big wine drinker. I have a favorite beer I can talk about at length. But in my view, these things, as all communities are effectively the same thing. It's about, how do you continue to give more and more utility to your community members? And so that's the question I would ask, what does this DAO plan on doing, other than giving, letting people have access to wine, which is nice. But again, that kind of works well in the Web2 world already.
Yeah, although I think I know I've heard you say, Lou, and correct me if I have this wrong, but your definition of a community is a group of people where everyone gets more out than they put in. Is that right?
Yes, definitely.
And so I think if I imagine, right. Yeah, thank you. A lot of clubs, right? A lot of groups where in the quote unquote Web2 version of the group, you would have had like a mailing list. You would have had maybe a web forum. Maybe people do get something in the mail once a month. If you take that and you add a little bit of governance to it, where everyone does get a little bit of decision-making power, even if they're not voting every day on like what action the winemaker should take next, or necessarily even every month on what flavor the wine should be next month, whatever the things are they're going to decide. I do believe that having that governance right actually does make you more engaged, because now you feel like you're not just like a customer of the club that like is kind of a little bit involved, but you're really you're as much a part of it as anyone else, right? There's no manager that has power over you.
I get that to the people who care about that, but I think most people don't care about that. One of my, I think, weirder views, I think, or at least out of the mainstream, is I'm not a fan of voting. I think voting is stupid. Nobody wants to vote, right? Maybe some people do, but I would like things to function in the way that I want them to function without having to vote. And I think we'll build systems. My guess is governance systems. I always say, the very first TV shows were people sitting at a desk with a microphone on going, hey, now we're on television. right? They were just doing radio on television because that's all they knew. And I feel like with regards to governance, in crypto, that's what we're doing. We're just taking the old governance systems and bringing them here. And so I think totally rethinking how we govern ourselves, again, with these tools, I think is going to be super exciting.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess to me, I'm a little bit more excited about bringing voting to the masses because I kind of feel like we never had voting at this scale, especially in the private sector. I mean, yes, technically, stockholder corporations, you can do proxy votes where Morgan Stanley is counting all the votes and then giving the results to the board. And then maybe that changes who's on the board and then they get to make a decision. But the fact that you can actually have a company that's operating day to day where decisions can be made as often as you want and freely and quickly by the whole community, by all the stockholders in that sense. I think that could be really powerful. It's almost taking something we've only been able to achieve in the past in the government sphere and bringing it to the private sector. And so I, for one, am excited about the fact that now we're taking voting, which I think has been yes, challenging and not always perfect, but a really innovative invention. And we're actually bringing it to the private sector for the first time. And we're going to be able to see what happens with that. But it sounds like maybe you're not as excited about that.
One of the super interesting things I just think is so misguided is just reading a white paper where they're incentivizing voting and they're paying people essentially, among the different things that they're to vote. And it's okay. You don't have to read anything and educate yourself on anything, but we'll pay you just to vote. Not quite sure what that's accomplishing, right? It seems to me that the people, if you're going to vote, then at least you should have the people who want to vote voting, not also people who don't want to vote, but they're voting just because you're paying them to vote.
Yeah. So do you have a thought on how can we govern a system in a way that it operates the way the individuals like yourself want it to without you voting? What's the...
Sure. So, I mean, and again, this is, pie in the sky stuff, but, I say, you know how a river votes where it's going? No, it goes in the exact best place that it should, just by what it is. And so, theoretically, a DAO should be able to look at the activities of the DAO members and by dint of what they're doing, and to some degree, right, that's what the best organizations take a look at data, right? And then they use the data to inform them what they're going to build next. And to some degree, right, that should be the same thing, right? We should have a DAO that looks at the data and then decides, what direction they're going to go.
Isn't that a bit like Facebook or Google, though, looking at the data and then using it to decide what we're going to buy next?
Yes. But, look, I like a lot of what Facebook does and a lot of what Google does is great, right? There's just a lot of it that is evil as well. So I want to keep the great stuff, and get rid of the evil stuff. Easier said than done.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, take the same power of technology, the AI, the machine learning, and just use it for good instead of evil is kind of one way of looking at it.
Exactly.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, that does it for the Just DAO It News Report. So let's turn to the featured guest interview with Lou Kerner. All right, Lou, that's been fun so far. We've already gotten to talk about some really cool stuff, but let's take a step back. Would you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you first got into Web3 and DAOs in the first place?
Sure. So again, as I said, I was an equity analyst on Wall Street, ran 2 digital companies, angel invested, and then started a small VC in 2012. I went down the rabbit hole in 13, 14, deep enough that the Wall Street Journal wrote a story on Bitcoin, quoted me as Wall Street Bitcoin expert. But while I was looking at it, I did not see it. It was harder to see then than it is today. It's still hard for most people to see today. And then on June 29th, 2017, I held a conference call, and on the conference on ICOs, and on the conference call, somebody said something, and I saw the crypto light, and I've been crypto 24/7 ever since.
It's awesome. It seems like that happens to a lot of us. There's like a moment that it clicks because we hear something or we see something or we experience something and we just get it. And then it's almost like overnight you go from not necessarily caring that much to just believing more than anything else you believe that like what's happening here is the future and that you need to attach yourself to it even if you don't know exactly what it means or what it's going to turn into. It sounds like that's kind of like the experience that you had.
Yeah, exactly, and I agree. And a lot of people had it. And part of the fun of being in the industry is getting to hang out with a bunch of other people who have had that
Mm-hmm.
same experience and have that same view of of what the future can be, and it's a better future.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I mean, I was involved in Bitcoin. I had some Bitcoins back in 2012, but it wasn't until 2020 that I actually understood that I actually saw the light, to use your words, and got really excited about this. You know, at 2012 I was like, "Oh, what's this thing Silk Road? I should check this out. Sounds interesting." And then 8 years later I was like, "Oh, this could really mean something." It's hard to remember sometime when you're talking to people that are not yet crypto native because you only get to talk to someone for 5 minutes or half an hour, and it's just hard to remember how much I had to learn to get to where I am now from when I first saw the light. um,
Yeah, I mean,
but
it is. Yeah, I say that the three best return on invested time in my life. One is wearing a motorcycle helmet because I've totaled two motorcycles. One is flossing my teeth because I've never had a cavity, and the third is learning about crypto. And it takes time, but the return on that time, I think, is amazing.
as high as flossing or
Exactly.
higher. That's awesome. I've flossed my whole life and I still get a bunch of cavities, so I don't know, I'd choose crypto over flossing if I had to pick. All right, flossing advice here on Just Dow It. Okay, next question for you, Lou. What projects are you working on now that you're most excited about, and how do they relate to DAOs?
Sure. So I think I mentioned earlier, I started a project earlier this year called the Crypto Oracle Collective, and it's a decentralized Web3 advisory firm. And what we're really trying to solve for, I mean, there are three problems. One really main one. The two smaller ones is it's tough for great projects to find great talent, and it's tough for great talent to find great projects. But the real big problem is even if they do find each other, quite often the great project wants to pay the great talent in illiquid tokens or equity, and the great talent has rent to pay. And so the idea of the collective is we're going to tokenize a collective, and when people work on projects, they can get paid in the tokens of the projects, or they can exchange those for the tokens of the collective that will be liquid. And the value of the crypto oracle token will be the treasury of tokens that the collective will keep 20% of all the fees paid to the collective. So we're really just paying it to ourselves. But that will provide the liquidity that will enable people to to pay their rent. And also, I think it also has a side benefit for those people who want to. I say that for the last more than 10 years now, I've made my living by investing as a VC and advising companies and getting compensated for that. And I've and I've done well, but it's I've been involved in more than 80 projects, and the significant majority of my compensation has been through three of them. And so I was able to get involved in enough projects that I had enough winners that it's all great. But if you only work in a small number of them, the odds are pretty good that none of them are going to hit. And so now by getting involved in the collective, you can be a part of this larger pool of tokens and diversify your assets.
Interesting. So it's almost like in the TradFi world, if we were getting stock options, but then putting them into a pool that we all share, that we shared as a collective. Is that
Exactly.
kind of?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. If you knew the stock market, returned X, and startups return actually, considerably more than that. But it's if you take out the top 10, it would be a lot worse.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's awesome. And are you trying to bootstrap it with any kind of capital, like investor at
Yeah, well, I
first, so
mean, the
that?
nice thing is, we're bootstrapping it by going out and doing work. We've got 5 clients today, and another 5 that I think are in the pipeline and will likely close. And so we're scaling very rapidly. We have more than 100 Web3 experts now who are part of the community, and so we're building the assets in the treasury, and now that we you can see a path, uh, and the value of the tokens will not only be what's in the treasury today, but what's the expected value of what will be in the treasury in the future.
Yep, very cool. Is the Crypto Oracle Collective taking new clients? And if any of the listeners are interested, where should they go?
So they can send an email to Alex B at cryptooracle.io. And Alex Brown keeps the trains running on time. And right now we have 2 clients a week coming and present. And the way that it works is we screen those. So they're generally high quality projects that and when they present, if somebody at the collective wants to lead the project and raises their hand, then we take them on as a client.
Is the Crypto Oracle Collective a DAO?
We're on the path to decentralization, and so at the moment, I'd say we're kind of in a period of decentralization that I describe as the benevolent dictator period, where most DAOs, are really on the path to becoming a DAO, on the path to decentralization, because it's very difficult to do anything of complexity, in a fully decentralized manner today.
So it sounds like you are a believer in decentralization, maybe just not voting per se, but there's a way to.
Oh, no, I'm a huge believer in decentralization. Weirdly, when I saw the crypto light on June 29th, 2017, even though I don't think I'd ever used the word decentralized before, I was actually a partner at 2 decentralized firms. It's just weirdly something that I gravitated towards.
So you remember the exact day? Do you remember exactly where you were, or what you ate, or what you were
Sure, no,
wearing,
I
or
told you I
anything?
was holding a conference call and on ICOs, and I had 4 thought leaders, including Bancor had just had the largest ICO in history. They raised like 150 million, and they were on the call talking about that, which was amazing. And we also had Kathleen Brightman, who was one of the co-founders of Tezos. And the following week, Tezos had even a bigger one. And one of the other speakers was a VC named Olaf Carlson Wee. And it was actually something Olaf said that, that then basically, the world was one thing, it's called a gestalt shift. And then you get new information, the world is something completely different. And what he said was inconsequential, really, but it was like I think of it like a puzzle piece. It's just a squiggle. But you take that puzzle piece and you put it in with all of the other pieces you've got in place, and then you can see what the puzzle is.
So let's talk about your experience with DAOs. What is the most common challenge you've seen DAOs face in their early days, and how would you recommend people address that challenge?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is the ability to move forward in a timely fashion, getting consensus. And I think the best way to alleviate that is to kind of be in this period of benevolent dictator in the early period, where you really don't need to get consensus on every little turn of the screw, but somehow you can centralize decision making in some ways such that you're able to move faster.
So is it really about like project management, or it really does go beyond that, and it's you need to let someone make decisions for the group?
I just have not myself personally been a part of a decentralized entity that has been able to make decisions in a timely fashion.
Interesting. So I guess to me, maybe in my idealized view of the world, you'd have a couple options. One is, assign someone to make the decisions and have everyone say, look, we're going to either agree and commit or disagree and commit. And either way is fine. We're going to keep moving forward with the org, or if you want to, you can leave, right? But just don't fight it. Or you could just have a system where you vote regularly and you vote often, and you say, okay, like if we disagree on anything, let's just get on the phone and have a vote, and then agree or disagree and
Yeah,
commit and
no,
move
I
on.
agree. I think that there are, yeah, and I agree that that sounds on paper like that's functional. But
Yeah.
I personally haven't been a part of a DAO where that's been
Hmm.
implemented.
Either way, I think the biggest problem that I've certainly seen as well is if you want to not institute a specific decision making system and just try to get everyone to agree on everything or form consensus on everything, that's definitely not going to work, because that's where you're absolutely going to introduce inefficiency at every step along the way. So there has to be some kind of system in place for moving quickly.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What about as you've seen DAOs grow beyond the earliest stages and they're starting to scale? What are the challenges you see them facing, and how do you address those challenges?
Sure. I mean, there's nothing but challenges. So yeah, obviously, how you compensate people for adding value to the DAO, um, is a big challenge, and right, yeah, and what I try and help people appreciate is this isn't about perfection, right? Because there is no panacea. This is just about, can we develop a system that's better than the current system? And for better or worse, the current system is so bad. In my view, for a lot of things, that building a better system shouldn't be that hard.
So when you talk about the current system in this context, are you talking about companies basically,
Yeah,
or?
I think for a lot of people, working for a company and how you're compensated there, I think does not work for the majority of people.
Hmm, hmm. So it seems like, though, it works for the companies, right? I mean, we have Facebook, we have Google. It seems like companies are working; they're just not working for everyone. Would you agree, or you say that actually the
Oh, no,
companies
no. I
really aren't
think as
working?
an organizational structure, they're at scale. They've proven to be highly efficient, far more efficient than any other way of organizing. That we've found, and to some degree, right. What we're talking about here is really is communism, right? DAOs is communism, right? But we think of communism as a bad, dirty word when it's only how communism has been practiced that has been really horrible. And in fact, if you take a look at China, if you look at China versus India, 1950, they were both economically, horrifically off, and one went a democratic path, one went a communist path, and now one is arguably the economic power of the world, and the other is still struggling.
Interesting. So all of this makes me think maybe we should consider going the doing the opposite and bringing the capitalist systems that have worked in companies up to governments, right? If voting doesn't work that well, maybe we should tell the governments, why don't you try being more like a company?
If you had a benevolent government, yeah, that which
Yeah,
is
okay.
which
Or
is the
maybe,
problem.
or at least non-monopolistic government, right? Then you could have competition between
Yes,
different
but
governments.
yes, to me, as much as I hate Trump and MAGA and blah blah blah. The Democratic Party hasn't proven to be a whole lot different in my view.
Hmm.
And I think, but unfortunately, I think our government is so broken. If people even try and fix something, right? We don't even talk about fixing things anymore.
Just living with it.
Yeah, just
Hmm.
kicking the can down the road.
Yep. Or if you're in crypto, maybe trying to replace it with something new, a new
Yeah,
can.
yeah. I mean, we're trying to replace it with something new. And to me,
Yeah.
like working, trying to fix the current system, I think it's beyond repair.
Mm, interesting. So when you compare Trump to the Democrats, are you comparing like authoritarian to
Well,
non-authoritarian?
I think look, Trump is what he is, and the amazing thing is that 40% of the country loves it,
Yeah.
and look, and that's fine. I think it's more because of the news that they decide to consume. I think if most of those people watched MSNBC like I do, they'd hate Trump too.
Mm,
But they, now why they choose to watch Fox News,
yeah.
that's the question. But and I think that's
Mm,
part of the problem. When I was growing up, our differences were kind of over political views. But now our differences is over facts, and I think you could
mm.
compromise on political views, but it's hard to compromise on facts.
Oh, interesting. I could see all of this boiling over to the world of DAOs too at some point if we're not careful, right? We need, and I think people are building in crypto, we need systems for spreading facts and systems that help us figure out what to believe in and what to believe and what not to believe. Otherwise, we'll end up in the same situation. Interesting. And I guess the more we digitize our world, the more we live in virtual reality, maybe the less there is truth in the first place because we actually get to live in whatever world we want to.
Well, I don't think there is truth, personally. There's
Mm.
my truth. I think I think most of the world's problems are that most people think their truths are better than other people's truths.
Mm. All right, cool. Broadly speaking, Lou, let's take it back to DAOs. What advice do you have for people starting DAOs today?
I would focus more on, what are the end goals that they're trying to achieve and how do you get there? It doesn't, again, in my view, have to be decentralized to start with. Um, I think part of the challenge is is getting people to believe that you're going to decentralize this because you say you will. And then obviously people have followed a lot of people who turned out maybe not to tell them the complete truth about what was going on, and that's unfortunate. For me personally, before I did the Crypto Oracle Collective, obviously I did the Crypto Mondays, which wasn't even started originally to be a DAO. But then as it grew and grew, obviously it made sense to turn it into a DAO. I tried in 2019 during crypto winter, but it did not take.
Hmm.
And so, I ran it, continued to grow it until it was of a scale that turned it over to a DAO. At that point, it was a lot easier because people could see the scale. And also it was, we were out of crypto winter. And so, the second time it took. And so also for me, I think it helped showing that, yes, I've started something, built it up, and then turned it over to a DAO. So, I think I'm benefiting from, people believing, but more so than others that yes, that I will turn it over to the DAO.
Yeah. So at first, it's like maybe don't worry about the D or the A, right? Don't worry about being decentralized or automating things at first. Just worry about building a functioning organization, however you have to do
Correct.
it.
Something that can become that flywheel of a DAO that we all want to get to when we have the right tools.
So what are those things you need? I mean, if we just focus on the O, right, to start a successful organization at first, not worrying about the D or the A, is that about business model? Is it about product market fit? Those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think it's the same as any other startup, right? And it's getting people, at the collective. It's about people have joined the collective and are part of it because I think they believe in the vision, or some mix of believing in the vision that I've outlaid, but I'm also trying to give them a lot of value today. So 3 times a week we have experts come in and talk about what they're doing, and those super interesting discussions. But the people at the collective itself too are so many super interesting people, and I think it's exciting for a lot of the folks at the collective just to be a part of the dialogue that goes on within the collective itself, and to be able to benefit from all of these experts kind of across the landscape.
Last question, Lou, and then we'll turn to our conclusion. Any favorite DAOs that you would recommend people check out?
There's an interesting DAO called the Orange DAO, which is decentralized VC, started from YC alums. So they have a huge base of community members, but I think that they're doing some interesting things, offering bounties to community members who help the companies, and they've got such a large
Hmm.
pool of really experienced people. I think they'll be able to bring a lot of value to
Hmm.
to companies.
Yeah, that's cool. It makes me think about Mass Challenge was an incubator that I've been through. It's a global incubator now around the world, and I think they should do something like that too. Is again to the what we were talking about earlier. I think to me, okay, I could be on the Mass Challenge alumni mailing list, or I could be part of the Mass Challenge alumni DAO. Maybe we call it Blue DAO or something.
Yeah,
And
exactly. I think,
you know,
And by the way, I used to go to Mass Challenge in Jerusalem.
oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that they kept the name Mass Challenge from Massachusetts, but it's everywhere. Awesome. All right, Lou, this has been amazing. Before we do close, where can people find you and your projects on the web and on social?
So the nice thing is there is no other Lou Kerners, LOUKERNER. So I'm that everywhere at Gmail, at Twitter, at Lou Kerner, on LinkedIn. So, I'm pretty easy to find.
That's awesome. I have the complete opposite situation. There's Adam
I'm
Millers
sorry.
everywhere. So I have to make up interesting new monikers. That's great. So you can find me on Twitter at 0xthriller. My DAO is at MyDAODS. That's MIDAODS, and mydao.org. And please consider liking us or leaving a review or comments. Send me questions that you think I should ask future guests. Lou, thank you so much for joining us. This has been really awesome.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Great show.
Yep. And for the audience, are you thinking about starting a DAO? Just DAO it. Just DAO It is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Just DAO It does not contain any legal or financial advice. My DAO also does not provide legal or financial advice, and nor does your host, yours truly.